Welcome to the BPD Bunch. I'm your host, Xannie, and today I'm here with Carys, Madhurima, Raf, and Solène. Today we're continuing our conversation on BPD and grief. If this or other BPD-related topics interest you, please make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so that you do not miss anything. Today we're going to be answering a question from one of our patrons. How do you grieve the time lost and past inability to protect yourself that comes from the complexity of developing BPD? As I've been on the road of learning to live with my BPD, these moments of sadness I haven't let myself feel before hit me with relearning the beauty of life, how sad it is that my mental health got so painful I considered ending it.
BPD has in the past gotten in the way of so much joy and has prevented us from experiencing a lot of joy that we might have been able to had it not been problematic.
I mean, it is sad that we did lose a significant part of our lives probably to BPD, to not trying so hard not to feel our emotions. I mean, I was very, very ashamed of feeling my emotions before recovery because I always had this idea in my head that I should not show how I'm feeling. Whatever is going on inside me should stay inside me. It should not come out as anything that people can use against me. But that did not stop me from feeling, right? I mean, I was always feeling in the extremes of things. I was just trying to internalize all of it. But for a significant time of my life, I mean, in my later teen years, early 20s, I got so deep into using alcohol. Everybody knows alcohol makes us labile, emotionally. So if I'm getting drunk and if I'm crying or if I'm getting drunk and if I'm having a fight, then it's not me, then it's the booze, right? So technically, I'm off the hook. I mean, I'm not the one who's doing the, I'm not the one who's being all feely and emotional and everything. So the fact that I've learned in my years is that this whole journey or this whole process of grieving is also something that gives the life that I'm living right now its meaning. I mean, grief is just love persevering, right? So if you're grieving something, it means that you had loved something before hard enough to grieve. And I mean, that's once I sat down to process it. It was not a sad or a heartbreaking thing. It just showed that I cared. And at this point in my life where I can acknowledge that I have a heart big enough to care so much, to hold so much love, and I can process it in my own way. And that's okay. I mean, that's not a sign of a life wasted.
I really like that.
When I was diagnosed with BPD, I was 32. And I remember so clearly the therapist who didn't diagnose me but brought it up to my attention before I got diagnosed, who was a friend of a friend, and he did it so gently. And he said, "Solène, I think this is something you've been carrying with you for a long, long time." And it was the first time that I felt so seen. And the first reaction was a lot of relief and a touch of anger. Like, how could this be missed for so long? I've since been diagnosed with ADHD as well. And I'm like, come on, people. The symptoms were in your face. Yes, I was trying, like you said, Madhurima, so eloquently, I was trying to hide and bottle up and all that, but come on, and so there was a lot of what if I had been diagnosed earlier? What if I had received the support that would have helped me, in so many ways to have obviously a different life until 32. I don't know what that life would have been, but there is that question that comes up. The way that I've coped with that is I've completely shifted my mindset around it now. So it's interesting to look back at, how I initially felt. Now I look at it, I'm like, damn, I was so lucky. Some people never get this information in their entire lifetime. I could have turned 90 something and been like, I probably wouldn't have reached that age, to be honest with you. And I'm not saying this in a dramatic way, like genuinely, like I thought I'm never gonna reach 35. Like I was so convinced, and I am 35 now, turning 36 in August. So did it, whip, whip, whip. And now I'm actually genuinely excited for like this new chapter. I feel like I got a new lease on life. I'm like, now like what is possible? Like, now I actually want to live. Yeah, of course, some days I still get that little thought that pops into my head, but it's a tiny thought and I know why it's here. I know it's here to somehow protect me from some emotions that I'm trying to avoid. And I'm like, oh, which emotion am I trying to avoid? And so I just feel that deep sense of gratitude that I got this information when I did, and that I still have time to inform my present and my future with it in a different way.
It's so interesting. I have a lot of gratitude also, but in a totally different way. Back to the question that grieving the time lost. I mean, I washed out of my undergraduate degree in my 20s. I didn't go back until basically 10 years after most people finish. Like if somebody in the United States finishes high school and goes to college, I basically did all of that 10 years later. And I think for a while I did feel really, really behind. And I think that gave me a lot of shame, feeling like there was something wrong with me. And like there's, I'm just this, I had a diagnosed mental health condition. Of course there's something wrong with me. Like this took all this time from my life and I could have done all these other things. But I've since come to realize that no one escapes suffering. And I sometimes say, like, there's nothing wrong with you. There's something wrong with everyone. And anyone who says they haven't suffered just hasn't lived long enough yet. And so for me, I actually feel immensely grateful that I got to experience my suffering early, because I think it means I got to learn something from it that I can use for more of my life. The worst thing I think would be, for me anyway, if I didn't experience any suffering until I was in old age. It's not that I would wish BPD on anyone or that I liked the experience. If I could choose it off a shelf, I probably wouldn't have. But I'm so grateful for the experience, because I feel like I have a wisdom now that I would never have developed otherwise, because honestly, I did not want to do the work. The only reason I did this much work to get to where I am was because I was in so much pain. And so now I am grateful for that, because if I'm fortunate enough to live to be in my 80s, I have at least another 40 something years that I can use all of the wisdom that I've gained from having BPD. And so in a way, I just got a different education. That time when everyone else was in college and I wasn't, I was just getting a different education. And it's given me skills and things that I think a lot of other people my age don't have. And that's something that makes me different and special in my own way.
For years, not for years, for like a long time, I'd be thinking like, fuck, if I had got diagnosed earlier, who knows where I would have been at? Or like if someone picked it as a child, I could be this superhero fucking thing. Always just assuming, oh, if this was sorted out, I would have been better than what I am right now. And I'm going to preface this by saying it became a lot easier to believe this when I became really happy with who I am as a person right now. There are things that I'm doing now, as far as, well, the BPD bunch is a good example, that I do not think I would have been able to do without going through the learning process of figuring out how to be myself, figuring out how to manage myself, all the symptoms and all that sort of stuff. There's knowledge in there that I've gained that would be impossible to learn otherwise without going through that process. And because that's happened, I'm now able to help other people and kind of take them through the same thing and give them the thing that I was never given. Again, not saying that if I was given the option, I would 100% do it again, but I think there needs to be a sort of like, for me anyways, like a mental acknowledgement that just because I would have, like, if I got diagnosed younger, or let's say if I didn't have ADHD, if I didn't have BPD or anything like that, doesn't necessarily mean I would just immediately be a better version of myself now. There are so many little differences and changes that could have happened. I could have been the worst, but right now I know what I'm doing is helping people, and that's kind of good enough for me to be grateful for the ups and the downs, because I feel like people are better off because I'm around them.
Whenever I think of like, get this anger of like, why me? I mean, everybody else kind of seems to have it easy. Why me? And then I like get reminded of this post I saw online that God knew that we would be too powerful if we had a stable mental health too. So like, look at us being, like turning out around our narratives, like being glass half full. And I mean, that is like a huge step for me, because I did not seem to like, even if 2 years back you would tell me that like, can you turn this around in a positive way? I would be very, very skeptical. Like, no, it's not possible. So
That's a bit, and the change happens slowly, but over time, to the point where you almost don't realize it until you say the thing, and you're just like, oh shit, I actually believe that.
Sometimes feel like the old version of you, though, would have like kind of rolled their eyes at some of the other things. Like, really?
The old version of me was very judgmental, and I would have judged me so hard and been like, oh my God, what an, okay, fine, sit here, be quiet, blah, blah, blah.
Well, you want to be alive now? Sure.
Sure.
exactly.
I have a whole big grief thing about grieving the life that I would have had if I had not had cancer. My breast cancer treatment is what made my ADHD rise to the surface, because my hormone levels in my brains changed. I hit menopause at 32, and I experienced perimenopausal psychosis in a way that put me over the edge when I started to experience BPD for the worst in my life, like very traumatically. And that's when I like burned through 2 marriages and had cancer, like all within like a 5-year time span. It was wild. And I have a lot of grief over that, and I hold a lot of shame as well. But like, it's cancer that did it all. You know what I mean? Like, if I hadn't been diagnosed with breast cancer, if I hadn't gotten cancer at 32, I wouldn't have hit menopause at 32. I wouldn't have had the breakdown that I did. It's very possible that I would have had kids, that I would still be in this career that I had chosen previously, that but then I look at it and I think, well, I also wouldn't have had the amount of personal growth. And I would have had perimenopausal psychosis at the more normal age appropriate, which would be like, 3 years from now. And I would have no tools to be able to deal with it. And I would be a parent. And what kind of generational trauma would I be participating in at that point?
Yeah.
I've thought that so many times. About me, not about you. That would be weird.
Right? You were thinking about my breast cancer, Raph? Oh my
No,
God.
no.
No, I'm kidding. You're so empathetic.
Because I can imagine when someone said the old version of us, what we would be saying or reacting to us. I can kind of imagine old me looking at this and being like, almost scoffing at it, not because I wouldn't have a picture of all the work that we did beforehand. It's hard to even imagine that we would be at where we're at now back then. I feel like that wouldn't be something that I would be able to do. So like, if you're watching and that's a thought that you're having, it's a very reasonable thought, because I've had that thought before. But it is possible and it is doable, and the feeling that I feel like a lot of us are having here is very, very real. And it's almost a bit of a shame, but it's kind of also true that you can kind of only realize it when you're here, when, like what you said, Carys, like when you go through it, when you're on the other side, you're like, it's just like a weight has been taken off and you can realize all those things. So like, to anyone watching, like, it is possible, and just keep on going, because like the journey will, I guess, pay off, for lack of a better word, and it will get easier. And we want you to keep on going, because there's more people like us.
Surprise yourself.
You'll surprise the shit out of yourself. Yeah.
I'm the person who like literally said to my therapist, I'm not gonna do this mindfulness thing. You know, the whole meditation, it just drives my anxiety up. Like, I just can't meditate, just forget about this. You know what I'm doing this weekend? Meditation teacher training. Meditation teacher training. what happened? So leaning in and trying these different things and keeping an open mind, and then one day you look back and you're like, whoa. Like, this is cool, you know. Wow.
Thank you everyone so much for watching. We hope you got a nugget of wisdom to take with you on your journey. Thank you again to our BPD besties on Patreon for voting for this topic. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Peace.
Bye.